Taliban reopen northern Afghan front. Far from the heartland of the Taliban insurgency in the south, this once peaceful northern province was one place American and Afghan officials thought they did not have to worry about. Afghan officials cut the police force here by a third 2 years ago, and again earlier this year. Security was left to a few thousand German peacekeepers. Only one Afghan logistics battalion was stationed here. But now, over the last 2 years, the Taliban have steadily staged a resurgence in Kunduz, where they now threaten a vital NATO supply line and employ more sophisticated tactics. In November, residents listened to air raids by NATO forces for 5 consecutive nights, the first heavy fighting since the Taliban were overthrown 8 years ago. The turnabout vividly demonstrates how security is broken down even in unexpected parts of Afghanistan. It also points to the hard choices facing American, NATO, and Afghan officials, even if President Obama decides to send more soldiers to Afghanistan, as he is expected to announce next week. So in other words, no matter how many troops you send to Afghanistan, the Taliban just move from one area to another. So how will sending more troops really help? Even under the most generous deployments now under consideration, relatively few additional troops are expected in the north. Most will be directed to the heartland of the Taliban resistance in the south and east. Failure to remain vigilant. Afghan and international officials say security never had to deteriorate so badly here. The Taliban were a scattered and defeated force in northern Afghanistan, long home to the strongest anti-Taliban resistance, the Northern Alliance. But the government and American military trainers failed to remain vigilant to signs of Taliban encroachment and reduced deployments in the northern provinces in order to beef up or bolster other, more volatile regions. The decisions created vulnerabilities as Kunduz became a target with the opening of a new logistics route here for NATO supplies from Russia and Central Asia over an American-financed bridge that opened in 2007. The route is supposed to serve as a strategic alternative to the treacherous passage through Pakistan, which is regularly attacked by Taliban militants. But now, Taliban have re-emerged with such force that during the presidential election in August, police officers were fending off attacks on the outskirts of the city of Kunduz, and militants were poised to overrun the center, officials said. The Taliban were at the door of the city. The people thought the government was at an end, said a senior security official. The Taliban reappear. Since then, the threat has been somewhat contained after an operation by NATO and Afghan forces, but the province remains at risk. Residents of Kunduz said they noticed that the Taliban reappeared in numbers in the region in the spring of last year. At just that time, under pressure from the American military in charge of training the Afghan security forces, the government of President Karzai reduced the number of police officers in Kunduz to just 1,000 from 1,500, officials said. Then, earlier this year, the Interior Ministry ordered 200 police officers from every northern province to help secure the capital, Kabul, which was suffering increasingly serious attacks from insurgents. The Taliban, who are mostly Pashtun, draw natural support through tribal ties with Pashtuns, who make up nearly half of Kunduz's population. Many of the fighters are local men who fled to Pakistan after 2001 and have now returned in the last 2 years. Kunduz, a fertile farming region interspersed with desert, has a trajectory similar to that of many other provinces, as the insurgents extended their hold through calculated intimidation and exploitation of tribal ties. By the spring of 2008, militants, or the Taliban, started appearing in groups of as many as 100, with some foreign fighters among them, local residents and officials said. They assassinated local leaders, including a Pashtun Quran reader who was beheaded, and quickly took control of several Pashtun areas. The Taliban were at first more subtle with their fellow Pashtuns. A group of them came last spring without guns to introduce themselves to one prominent Pashtun family and to ask for support. They were worried about their own safety then, one family member said, asking not to be named. They were behaving very well with the people, he said. They stopped thieves and brought law and order to the area. But, as elsewhere, that changed as the Taliban gained power and confidence, he said. This year, the Taliban arrived with lots of cash, new dollars, and guns, and began collecting an Islamic tax from farmers. Now, he said, they come to his home and demand to be fed, and have begun an intimidation campaign against his family for not supporting them at the beginning. It is dangerous for us if a guerrilla force has an income. Drug smugglers with an eye to Kunduz's border have jumped into an alliance with the Taliban to create instability that allows their illegal business to thrive. The former Taliban government was so harsh that many Afghans offered little resistance. What surprises is how easily people give in when they come because their memories are so fresh. One villager from a northern province district who moved to the city of Kunduz to find work said, "We are forced to be happy with the Taliban. They force the people in each street to prepare 10 guns and men. They say, 'Come and do jihad.'" So, again, in other words, in Afghanistan, the Taliban can easily move from one province or area to another. So if you put more American or U.S. troops into Afghanistan, most likely the Taliban will just go to another province, or, in a worst-case scenario, they'll be pushed into neighboring Pakistan, thereby or therefore destabilizing the area or Pakistan even more. So in effect, putting more pressure on these people will probably only make things worse. Because, again, what is there really to win in Afghanistan? And how, when they know they have won it? And how much longer will this take? How much more time? There's much more going on, something much bigger going on here. These are the end times, transition days. The transition is an ongoing, continuing process. And there are many signs happening, day by day, all around the world.